Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. We begin our press conference. I'm sure that you all had a chance to get acquainted with the information distributed by the press service of Almaz-Antey Group on the challenging the sanction imposed by the General Secretariat of the European Union. We hope that the presented new data during this conference would show you that the sanctions towards our concern are absolutely unjust. Now, on the order of our work, the conference will be opened by an address of the Director General of Russian Military Air Defense Group, Almaz-Antey, Mr. Novikov. The next speaker is the Counselor of the General Director, Mr. Malishevsky, Mikhail Vladimirovich. He'll tell you about the results of the survey carried out by the specialists of the group related to the Boeing crash of MH17 flight. Mikhail Vladimirovich will give you a presentation of this survey, which is going to be displayed on several billboards that you see here in this room. Then Mr. Novikov will sum up, will draw the conclusions of the presentation afterwards, after which we will have questions and answer session. I'd like to underline that today we'll do our best to tell you as much as possible about our survey and answer all of your questions. Nevertheless, I sincerely ask you, dear colleagues, ask questions to the speakers which relate to the topic of today's conference, the questions which are going to be beyond the competence of our group, Almaz-Antey, will be rejected. The total time of our conference is around 1 hour or 1 hour 15 minutes. During the answers in the hall, we will have our assistants who will bring you the microphones. So those who will have an opportunity to ask a question, please stay where you are and wait for the microphone. I'd like to underline also that our press conference is going to be translated into 3 languages. So if necessary, please use your equipment for translation. I also would ask you to switch off your mobile phones, please. Now I'd like to give the floor to the Director General of Almaz-Antey Air Defense Group, Mr. Valentinowich Novikov. Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. As you may know, on May 19, our group applied to the General Secretariat of the European Union with a request to provide grounds of sanctions imposed on the concern. At the same time, we brought a complaint to the General Court of the European Union. On our opinion, the connection between the sanction imposed by European Union against our concern and the crash of Malaysian Boeing in July over the Ukraine is obvious. We consider such actions as unjust and damaging for our group. And so we carried out a big job on analysis of all information available related to the plane crash. And today we would like to present proofs of absolute non-involvement of our group to the disaster with the Malaysian Boeing. The concern in this regard has exclusive competencies. Our holding includes companies and plants which design and produce the SAM system Gadfly or Buk and the missiles for this system. Our specialists were invited as experts to join an international commission on investigation of the Boeing crash, and our group has competences in the area of flight traffic control and management. Due to high interest of press to this event, we decided to provide all necessary explanations in a press conference format. Today, You will be able to track down the whole chain of the analysis carried out by our specialists and to find out answers to many interesting questions. I'd like to underline once again that the task of today's press conference, which is carried out by our group, is to prove the non-involvement of our group to the tragedy in the sky over the Ukraine and the ineligibility and unjustifiable of imposing economic sanctions. The questions to find those who are guilty of this catastrophe and our versions of this event will be left by our group without comments. We hope that the other structures will give answers to these questions. Thank you very much. As I already told you, we will give the floor to the chief designer of Almaz Antey Group, Mikhail Vladimirovich Malyshevsky, who will present the presentation of our survey, of our research, please. Sure. Dear ladies and gentlemen, please see a presentation on the results of the flight incidents with MH17, which happened in July 2014 over Ukraine. In the very beginning of the press conference, I'd like to underline that while working on this analysis, we worked together with Russian experts who took direct part in the investigation of a similar incidents over the Black Sea, which happened in 2001 when the Ukraine missiles brought down Tu-154 of Siberia Airline. During the analysis, our task was to find two decisions: to specify the type of the missile and determine the conditions for the missile getting into the aircraft proximity. The whole analysis, the visual part of it, which will be demonstrated on the billboards, is carried out based on the materials of the preliminary report of the International Commission and also on the information publicly available. Of course, during the analysis, we used other materials which were provided for the international commissions, but we are not authorized to demonstrate them all. The main principle of this analysis was the principle of conclusions. All conclusions were made only based on the real materials studies, the real damages obvious on the construction of the plane, strike elements, or other available characteristics of any other materials which from time to time emerged in the media, different evidences of pictures or presence of any equipment in other locations were not taken into account. In the first stage, we specified the type of the missile. To this end, we carried out an overwhelming analysis of all damages on the outer skin of Boeing 777 of MH17 flight, damages of the basic structure of the aircraft, and damages of the interior equipment of the aircraft. During the preliminary analysis, we specified characteristic damages, which are shown in the bottom of this slide, which gives us an opportunity to state that the main cause was the damage by the SAM missile. On the second slide, you can see the comparison of the damages on the skin. On the left and on the right, similar damage which we found in the materials of the objective control carried out by the anti-defense concern, which are carried out during test launches. These pictures are black and white because they were made in the 1980s. But anyway, on these pictures you can find all tracks which are obvious on the outer skin of the aircraft. You can see quite obvious rectangular or oval shaped holes holes with uneven brims, and similar damages you can find on the missiles which were launched during testing launches. After the thorough analysis of outer damage of the aircraft skin, we carried out analysis of all types of missiles which are produced and were produced by the plants of our group. The missiles which could be taken into account here is there are only two types, 9M38 or 9M38M1. These missiles both used in the Buk AD system. The second type missile is now the main one, which were excluded from the possible list due to different reasons. First, every of the missiles is loaded with the unique warhead, 938 has two fractions of striking units. All the elements are indicated on the slide, and all characteristics and weight of these elements are indicated here. Both fractions are light and heavy. They have the parallelepiped form. In the rocket 9M38M1, we have the upgraded warhead 9M314, which is equipped with three types of striking elements, two elements on the top and in the bottom light fraction, and also the heavy fraction in the form of the I shape. In total, there are more than 700,000 striking elements. Another type has of the missile has unique striking elements which were not used in other fractions. I'd like to underline that the light fractions are absolutely similar. Their difference only in the grade of the steel they are produced of. The characteristic damages, which were square holes 13 by 14 millimeters, and it allowed us to exclude from the list of missiles 9M317 rockets, and we had only two possible variants, neither 3M38 or 9M38M1, and based on the data provided by the experts and based on the public information, the I-shaped striking element was detected, and the conclusion can be made that due to the striking element's form and the form of damage, the most probable variant of the missile is the missile 9M38M1. This rocket is equipped with three types of striking elements and contains more than 7,800 striking elements. On the next slide, you can see the main characteristics of missile 9M38M. Until recently, the majority of these characteristics was a kind of a state secret. Nevertheless, we provide you all characteristics of these rockets, which were disclosed in the interest of the International Investigation Commission. On the next slide, we present animation, how the splitter field of the rocket is changed due to the speed of the missile. In the static plane, the splitter area is two leaves of 56 degrees approximately. The green arrow shows the sectors of light fraction, and the red arrow shows heavy fraction. I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that before installation of this warhead to the missile, the designers carried out dozens of hundreds tests of warhead separately from the missile and in assembly with the missile. And we can have the proofs that not less than 96% of all heating segments are distributed in these two sectors, or other 4% can have the tolerance of 2 to 3 degrees. We took during the tests the speed of the missile and the plane were taken into account. The form of the fragment clouds is changing with speed, and two striking fronts are built. These red lines are lighter splinters with higher speed, and the violet line shows the front of eye-shaped heavy fraction. The main peculiarity of the Rocket 9M38M is the special area which is called a lancet, or the killing lancet, which is perpendicular. Basically, the area of concentration of more than 40% of all splinter mass and more than 1/2 of the whole kinetic energy of the whole flow. It is not accidentally. A lot of tests were done on that because this peculiarity was designed deliberately for the following tasks. It's an open secret that SAM is a device which should provide damage for all aerodynamic means. These devices, these missiles, were designed in 1980s, and the most difficulty was special jet fighters, which were which had quite heavy armory and doubling and redundancy of different control units of the plane, and to provide efficient attack independent from the approach angle. This so-called scalpel or lancet was taken as a basis. These scalpel, this lancet, independent from the missile orientation, should damage the less protected parts of the aircraft, wings, engine, the bottom part, or the flaps. And the explosion point was on the distance from 3 to 5 meters from the top part of the plane, from the cockpit of the plane. On the next slide, you may see the composition of the fragments cloud. The fragments cloud of this missile is a very complicated figure of rotation, and slight changes of location of the missile in the space could drastically change the configuration of this cloud. In this example, you can see the isometric projection of the fragments cloud, and you may see that slightly changes of the location of the missile can allow changes in the character of damage. And taking into account the scalpel feature of the missile, it gave us an opportunity to determine the conditions of contact of the missile and the plane. On the first stage of our study, we defined the type of the AD system. This is SA-11 Getfly, the type 9M38M1, and its warhead 9M314. On the bottom part, you can see all three fractions of striking elements which are included in this warhead. As I already told you, there are more than 7,800 heating elements. On the second stage, we studied the damages of the aircraft. The general analysis showed that the majority of damage were in the nose part, over the roof of the cockpit. Also, the left wing and the left engine were damaged. Slight damage and medium damage were in the left side of the tail flaps. And we have all slides with 3 projections. In order to study in more detail the damage of the aircraft, especially its nose, the specialists of the group, using different designs and drawings of Boeing 777-200 provided by one of the Russian airlines, which uses similar class aircrafts, we carried out the reconstruction of the nose part, and the results of these reconstructions are provided in 3 projections on this slide. All white elements of the construction, these elements were found and identified. In black, these are missing parts or unidentified parts. Afterwards, these specialists and experts studied more than 200 damages of only outer skin of the aircraft body. And their distribution, approximate distribution, is shown on the slide. In the real life, we recorded exact coordinates linked to this special stringer or the elements of the bodywork or airframe of the aircraft. On the next slide, you can see the samples. The skin of the starboard and the character of damage is changed with the vicinity to the nose. In blue, the location of this element is indicated. In the construction of the plane, going further from the nose, the density of damage is changing and the character is changing, which is conditioned by the changing of contact angles of striking elements with the skin of the plane. On the left, we can see the traces of so-called pitting, micro-punch holes, demonstrating that the explosion of the warhead was at the distance of no more than 3 to 4 meters. Both pictures were included in the preliminary report of the international commissions, and they were one of the main evidence that the airplane was taken down by the explosion elements from the outside. The next element is the part of the roof over the cockpit. You can see multiple damages of the outer skin, and they are changing with the different angle up to the ricochet. At the very brim, we can see only small damage of lacquer coating, which shows that this element accepted these splits with the angle closer to 0. Third element is the right part of the cockpit. Please note that on the bottom you can see a picture how this right part of the cockpit was loaded to be transported to the Netherlands. And all bulkheads were on the site. On the location of the evidence were solid, and there were no outer hole in this whole piece. And on the right, 2 glasses stayed unshuttered. On the second stage of the analysis, the specialists carried out studies of the basic structure of the plane. special frames were taken, and the analysis of the body structure was made. Red lines indicate the elements of the body structure which were completely damaged. The light red dots indicate puncture holes or partial destruction of the main structure of the plane. On the next slide, you can see several variants of these damages. In blue, we circled punch holes of this model of the plane. In some cases, striking elements induced partial destruction of body structure and airframe. In some cases, there were only holes. And in some pieces, for instance, on the second picture, we can see the main support of the body structure of the door behind the cockpit, which is reinforced due to the anti-terrorist requirements, and you can see the damages of this element. And then the distance and the total elements were identified. On the left, it is marked in red. The blue lines are elements of bulkheads which were absolutely damaged, and the yellow dots, these are locations of partial destruction. This element in the preliminary report was considered as one of the main elements, proving that this plane was damaged by outer high-speed striking elements. In red circles, we see ingress holes. Blue ovals are damages in the bulkhead elements, and the violet squares are places of complete destruction of the basic frame. Using the linking all these elements, we were able to determine the direction of striking elements, and they are indicated with arrows. Some elements, we can see they damaged 2 or 3 airframes, which induced the destruction of the whole basic structure of the plane. Similar conclusions can be made on the next element, which is indicated in red, and at the same time we can state that this element was behind the cockpit on the partition wall closer to the entrance to the business compartment. Looking at the roof, we can have the same conclusions. All striking elements were moving along the construction of the aircraft body. This is the most important milestones of this analysis. After the analysis, we carried out similar work on the damages of the interior equipment, for instance, the element of the flooring of the cockpit in the area of the captain's chair, and the analysis of damage on the right. And we can see characteristic location of holes, ingress holes, and their identification along with the bulkhead elements. And we can see that all striking elements along the cockpit flooring were coming from the nose to the flaps, along the x-axis of the whole aircraft. This picture was also included in the preliminary report of the International Investigation Commission. So, after having evaluated all elements of the pieces of the airplane, we determined the direction of moving of all striking elements. In the left side of the slide, in blue arrows, you can see the direction along the port side of the plane, and they induce the damages of stabilizer and left engine. In the right part of the slide, in the enlarged view, you can see the direction of striking elements moving along the airplane construction in its nose part. And so the damages of the skin and the body structure is made by the striking elements moving along the x-axis of the plane. And taking into account the information, the main flow of striking elements from the missile, the specialists made it possible to state that the rocket was moving with the crossing of the course of the plane, which is possible only if the shooting is made not on the face but from the side of the plane. On the next slide, we can see the reconstruction in the isometric view. In white, we marked the elements which were found and identified. On these elements in different colors, different stages of damage of the outer skin is indicated. The white area is the complete damage area. In this area, the integrity of the whole structures of the elements was damaged, of bulkheads and basic structures. Blue lines show damages farther from the nose, and please note that the force elements of the aircraft were damaged also in the locations where on the surface we saw only ricochets or small damages of painting coating, which states that all elements were moving from the nose to the tail, and the majority of the elements was moving not along the skin but inside the body of the aircraft. On the next stage, we started to analyze the contact point of the missile, and for the majority of you, this picture is quite very well known, which popped up several days after the incident over the Ukraine. On this picture, we can clearly see that SA Getfline launch was made at Snezhnoye area. But the fact is that at that time, none of the experts was not visiting the crash site and couldn't evaluate the state of the plane because elements of the aircraft were scattered along a very big area. Nevertheless, we had this picture, and based on this picture, a lot of different internet versions were created. We analyzed this version from the internet, and we identified that if, assumingly, the missile could be launched from any location close to Snezhnoye village, the contact points of this missile to the plane were on parallel courses. In course of the modeling, we found out that the contact condition is the crossing up to 20 degrees in the horizontal plane and from 0 to 20 degrees in the vertical plane. So we demonstrate you the most extreme variant which could explain the version of Snezhnoye launch. As a result, you can see the points of the explosion and the damages evident at the body of the plane. In black, we see the damage in the outer skin, without taking into account the angles of striking elements, which can be explained. And a lot of mismatches are evident. First, the damage of the whole structure from the left engine, left wing, and left part of the stabilizer. And tail flaps couldn't be explained by the version of shooting on the head-to-head course. Then the integrity of the glazing from the starboard. This picture was made during its loading to ship to the Netherlands. I already told you about that. All elements of the starboard should have multiple holes and punch holes, which is not the case. And the modeling at the plant shows that the secondary damage should be the right wing and the right engine. In this case, the secondary damage is the damage of the body structure of the plane from secondary splinters from these pieces of the nose and the cockpit, which should have the direction of a flow along with the striking elements. You can see the reconstruction of what happened if we had head-to-head contact. The plane entered this thyroid figure, and after damaging on the left, none of the elements of the plane construction wouldn't be touched by any striking elements. Here, the same reconstruction, but with the other angle. You can see that the plane enters this fragments cloud. All these modelings were made with regard to the actual speed of more than 2,000 meters per second. And the speed of the aircraft, according to the report of the International Commission, was 250 meters per second. On the next slide, you can see the fragment of this video modeling. With white arrows, you can see the motion of splinters if the missile would come on any angle from Snezhnaya. In this case, these splinters with a mass of more than 8.5 grams with the speed of more than 2,400 meters per second should shatter the glazing on the right side, and all elements on the right side should have multiple damages. The indirect proof of that is that during studying the skin, we see that one striking element passed 3 to 4 barriers. Here it had only 2 barriers. And in green, we see the direction of striking elements which were defined during the preliminary analysis of the bodywork. The analysis of all these data allows to exclude the damages of the aircraft if the launch was made from Snezhnaya. Afterwards, our specialists started to determine the conditions of approaching. The previous version, the internet version, took into account the conditions of this rapprochement. We carried out a comprehensive study of outer damages of the frame and the skin, and the areas of maximum damage was detected. In blue, you can see the areas of complete destruction of the plane and the loss of the structure integrity. After that, the point of explosion was determined, and of all damages, we selected the damage where splinters were flowing closer on almost zero angle, and which resulted in a slight damage of the coating. These damages allowed to identify not only coordinates. The coordinate was the location between stringers and bulkheads, and the opportunity to measure angles of rapprochement. And so, after identifying the vectors, the area of explosion was also identified. It is presented here in a red circle. The red cross is in the center of this area and the most probable explosion point. This initiation point was at the area of the first pressure bulkhead. Afterwards, we carried out the preliminary analysis.
In the horizontal plane, we have projected the sector of the fragmentation cloud at which there is a maximum exactness of the fragmentation dissipation in the nose part of the plane, from 70 to 72 degrees of the horizontal plane. We have run another simulation in the vertical plane, and the conditions were from 20 to 22 degrees. Therefore, we have defined the meeting conditions of the plane and the missile. The missile went in the horizontal direction from 70 to 72 degrees, and even at a slight orientation change of the missile, there were significant changes. There could have been significant changes in the killing area. So 1 degree more or less would have other type of destruction pattern. And we were found out that the missile were coming in the horizontal plane of 70 to 78 degrees and 20 to 22 degrees in the vertical plane. Apart from that, this orientation explains the destruction of the airframe of the aircraft that resulted in its destroy and collapse in the air. Next slide is showing a 3D simulation of the above mentioned version, the positions of the aircraft and the missile during the engagement. You can see that this particular place and location of the missile and an aircraft, the gray shade is the cloud of fragments, and this is the only way that the damage that were observed is possible. So the starboard glazing in this particular case could remain unchanged, and this is the another aspect of that destruction. And you can see that given the inertia of the aircraft, the cloud of fragments could cover all those items that were damaged in the primary wave. This is another aspect of the same simulation. You can see that the left part and left engine and left fin of the tail are damaged. And next slide is also showing the another aspect of the same simulation. Only in this case, and this course and approach of the missile, we can explain all damages that is inflicted by the aircraft. Apart from that, please pay attention to the fact that this is the only way of the fragment cloud orientation could result in what we have obtained in the simulation, the full damage to the airframe towards the construction line of the aircraft. Next stage was about the definition of the preliminary or of the place where the site could have been fired. In this case, we have had a database of this spatial position of the aircraft from the findings of the International Commission. On the right side, you can see the meeting conditions of the aircraft and the missile, calculated by Almaz-Antey staff. Due to the fact that MH17 was flying directly straight in the three last minutes of its flight, the horizontal path of the missile could be direct, but during the calculations we have assumed all possible errors in terms of coordinate changes and all possible errors that could occur in the case during the flight of the missile. So the real path of the missile could be not direct, and that could result in the changes of the meeting angle or engagement angle by 2 to 4 degrees. The next is the assumption of the missile path in the vertical plane. No matter how funny it could be, but it depends on the Pythagoras theorem. The so-called hypotenuse, or the slanted line, which depends on the two other sides of that triangle. Well, the missile trajectory depends on the distance. You can see different options. If the aircraft was flying at 10,000 meters above the ground, we can see that even a slight change of the inclination in the horizontal plane results in a significant vertical plane changes, and it's very narrow range within 15 to 16 kilometers. That angle of approach of 20 to 22 degrees could take place. Therefore, based on the calculations, we have tried to find out the most probable site where the missile could have been launched. This region is to the south of Zavershinskaya settlement. This is a triangle of 2.2 to 2.5 kilometers, and the proximity of that angle from east to west defines the horizontal plane of the missile, and rectangle from north to south define the vertical plane of the missile motion. The simulation run testified to the fact that this pattern of the angle of approach could only be in the case if the missile had been fired from the Zarochinskaya settlement. So, if the missile were coming from the right side of the aircraft, from the starboard, we can logically see all the damages that took place in reality. Again, I want to highlight that if the missile was coming from the back, in this case, all the fragments or a canister could go along the construction axis of the airplane, because if the missile had flown from Snezhnaya settlement, it should not be the case. Again, if the missile would have flown from Snezhnaya settlement, the nose part of the airplane should have been damaged in the area of the first bulkhead and in the area between the galley and the business class cabin. We can only explain it by the probability or possibility that the missile was shot from that settlement. So we have analyzed the type of missile, which is 9M314M, and we have defined the meeting conditions of the engagement of the missile of the aircraft, horizontal and vertical planes, and the most probable area from which the area could have been shot under those conditions was Zarochinskaya, to the south of Zarochinskaya settlement. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Mikhail Vadimovich. And I would like to give a floor to General Director of Almaz-Antey Company, Jan Novikov. Ladies and gentlemen, given the above presentation, we believe that we have confirmed that the missile that shot a Boeing MH17 flight over Ukraine could only be done with 9M318M1 from SA-11 Buk missile system. This missile is out of production back in 1999. After 1999, the missile was not in production, so neither the Ante company nor any other enterprise could supply those missiles to anybody in the 21st century. But at the same time, we have strong evidence that these types of missiles are available in the Ukrainian armed forces. Back in 2005, our company had provided the pre-contract extension of life cycle of such missiles in Ukraine, and during that time, the amount of such missiles in the Ukrainian armed forces were 991 missiles. In conclusion, I want to say that our calculations and simulation were submitted by us to the International Commission investigating the case of that air crash. We believe that they will be used during the objective findings of that investigation. Moreover, if necessary, we are ready to run a full-scale physical test using independent experts and observers. We are ready to blow this missile 9M318M1 under the angles that we have shown on a obsolete airplane of the same structure and to show exactly what is going to be the damage pattern. If necessary, we can do it despite all costs. Thank you. Thank you, Jan Valentinovich. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have the last phase of our press conference, a question and answer session. I want to see where our assistants are. Please raise your hands. Well, I can see. Okay, thank you. I kindly ask you to introduce yourself, your media that you represent, and your name. Let's start from the right side. Interfax Agency. Are you 100% sure that it was the missile 9M318M1 from Buk SA-11 missile system? And who was in control of that territory that you've mentioned, from where the missile could have been shot? Jan Valentinovich, please, the floor is yours. As was mentioned in the presentation, we have run a detailed analysis of it. Basically testifies to the fact that if the Boeing was shot down by an SAM missile, it could only be Buk M1 and this type of missile, 9M318M1. Well, of course, the final findings on this case should be made after all technology-based evaluations, because heavy fractions, killing elements, as Mikhail Vadimovich has said, at that missile 9M38M and 9M38M1 are of the same shape, 13 by 14 millimeters. However, their shape is different, a parallelepiped and eye-shaped fragments. But in order to define whether this type or that type of fragments were used, we should have run the chemical analysis of components that the fragments are made of, and to confer it or to compare it with the metal of the striking elements. And as far as the venue or the place from which the missile could have been shot is concerned, I mean the point from which the missile could have been launched. Who was in control of that area? Well, basically, to my regrets, I cannot say, because we're telling you about the technical expert evaluation, but who was in control of that settlement, it goes beyond of that technical expertise or expert evaluation. But basically, in the press or in the media, you could have found different options or versions of that place. There were different maps available, and a map saying that Zarochinska was under control of the Ukrainian forces, and there were Buk SAM missiles deployed there. We cannot comment on that. We have provided our technical evaluation, and we are 100% sure for every word of this technical analysis. And if necessary, we can carry all costs for that physical experiment. Any other questions? Let's continue from the right side. I would like to find out the actions that your company has made, and what is your economic losses in terms of resources. What was your losses? Well, so as I have said, we have proved that if the aircraft were shot by a SAM missile, it could only be a Buk M1 SA-11 missile, and a specific missile which was out of production before our company was established back in 1999. And the company was established in 2002. There is no cause and effect relation. As far as the sanctions on our company, if we take a look back, they are related to that MH17 air crash. And the sanctions are the following. Assets freezes took place on the 30th of July 2014, and export bans of dual-use equipment back in September 2014. If losses are concerned, or damages on our company from the sanctions, I would say that basically the damages or the losses are not that big that could seriously impact our activities. Well, moreover, because of the sanctions, we were able to produce elements that we were not in production before, but still, the company back in 2015 is in the final stage of the biggest projects. This year we're going to commission 2 machine building facilities, and in the first quarter of the next year we're going to introduce a huge R&D cluster in St. Petersburg, made up of several institutes and facilities. So in this year, 2015, we purchased equipment, and because of the sanctions we had to reshape the markets and go to suppliers that do not say no to us. And of course, these are additional costs for redesign, as some of works have already been done. I mean, engineering infrastructure. But the most important thing is time. You know, time is money for the business. Thank you, Jan Valentinovich. This side, please. Your question. Artur Gromov from .ru newspaper. Can we make some conclusions from your analysis to which party of the conflict that missile system belonged to, and what do you think about lifting sanctions? If the charges are not relevant, what do you think? Is this a question to General Director? Yes. Well, as far as the whom did the missile system belong to, well, again, we cannot tell you it for the purity of this experiment, because technically we have proved the type of the missile. We do have documentation that this type of missile is available at Ukrainian armed forces, and back in 2005, as I have said, we have made a contract, we have made an agreement, and formal notes of this type of missiles in Ukrainian armed forces. There were 991 items available, and we have an extension of life cycle. We have to confirm as a designer this life cycle of the missile. When the missile is produced, the general designer defines the life cycle of the missile, and once it expired, the chief designer only is entitled to extend this life cycle. And to do so, because after that, The chief designer is solely responsible for this. If something happens to the missile, it could explode at the SAM launcher and could have losses and possible fatalities. So in this case, we need to testify the missile to shoot several missiles. Again, this all should be defined by the chief designer. At that time, we have evaluated the missiles, but the Ukrainian side, maybe to cut costs, decided to extend the life cycle on their own. In this case, the practice and under all regulations, neither chief designer, well, we are chief designer company and we are manufacturer, and we are responsible for their operations, but in this case we don't bear any responsibility. Thank you. The question from the middle. RIA Novosti, my name is Anna Shubina. The question is about the European Court of Justice. What is the date of your lawsuit trial, and how long could it take to have a decision, and who is going to represent your interests, your own lawyers or an international law firm? This is a question to me, a question to the General Director, but I want to remind you that in the beginning of the press conference, we have said that our press service has distributed the press release, and we have filed a suit to the European Court of Justice about the unjust nature of the sanctions against our concern about our company, and we have named the law firm working with us, Taylor Wessing. But just a few words about this. Our interests are represented by Taylor Wessing, a German law firm. Those guys support us in the interests of Almaz-Antey Group to appeal in an administrative manner, and we have also applied to the General Secretariat of the European Council to revisit the actual data and actual information based on which the decision on inclusion of the group of companies in the sanctions list. And the challenging in court by filing a lawsuit to the Luxembourg Court of Justice of the European Union to challenge the decision from the European Union as of March last year. Thank you. Russia Today. You have mentioned Zarochinskaya. This place is controlled by the rebels, and there could not be the Ukrainian forces. The Zarochinskaya is deeply under control of Donetsk militia forces, and there could not be any Ukrainian forces there. The question to the General Director. As I have said, by our calculations, there are two options, Zarochinskaya or Snezhnaya. Snezhnaya is, as we have shown, that is not the case, and we are ready to confirm it once again, that head-on collision was not possible for that missile to hit the aircraft due to its versatile nature. This is the first time that information is unveiled. The so-called scalpel, or the cloud of fragments, it was confidential information, but the missile is no more in use. Therefore, the customer, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, has lifted this, removed this secrecy, and we can clearly see the angle of attack of the missile, and based on this angle of attack, we can find or stipulate the exact place, knowing the wind, speed, the trajectory of the missile and of the aircraft. And as Mikhail Vadimovich has said, This is not our version, this is our calculations. And they show that the launch was made from the area next to Zarochinskaya. The air is 1.5 kilometer plus minus. And who was there and who was in control, I have no comment on this. Thank you. Your question, please. Alexander Nevarov from RIA Novosti. So we can say with a big probability that it was launched from Snezhnaya. But why? Sorry, from Zarochinskaya. But why Snezhnaya? Why so much information in the media about Snezhnaya? I'm not sure. Mikhail Vladimirovich has also mentioned this in his presentation. This information was the first in the media. Well, but at that time it was not possible to make any conclusions. So we can see that by our estimations and calculations, well, I'm not sure. I do not comment on this, but the more stable and the clear was the area from, was it in control by the rebels or not? But we are a technical company, and the conference is about this. So basically, there's three bottom lines, I would say. All the rest is just our assumptions based on certain, civil opinion or mass media information. You know more than I. But our major findings are as follows. Based on the damage to the aircraft, and our experts were in that commission, investigating commission, they saw it with their own eyes, those fragments of the airplane, and the preliminary findings of the commission was also analyzed and what was submitted to the commission, and having skills and competence on the missile, because this is our products and the general designer is still alive. We talked to him, and before that press conference. We are absolutely sure that we cannot disregard any other options, or versions, and I think that could be done and should be done. I mean, to make correct findings, to have a process analysis, to compare the fragments on the chemical substance of the puncture holes, and if it were SAM, and we are producers of SAM missile systems, it could only be Buk M1 SA-11 Gadfly NATO classification and missile 9M318 M1. All the rest is just our assumptions, okay? Thank you, Yan Valentinovich. Ivan Safronov, Kommersant newspaper. I've got two questions. You have mentioned the Zarochinskaya settlement, but none of the residents were saying about any trace of the missile, about any SAM missiles that were visible in that area. This is the first question. And the second question is about Ministry of Defense version. They were saying that the Malaysian aircraft could be shot down by Sukhoi 25 of the Ukrainian Air Force. Did you take note of this data or not? Let me divide this question or the answer in two parts. Mikhail Vadimovich will voice up the technical option by the traces from the missile or by the footprints of the SAM trailer. As far as the aircraft is concerned, we are 100% sure and ready to be held responsible for every single word. And we're very cautious about this, about different options or assumptions. And again, for the purity of that test, we do not reject any other versions. But again, if this air crash of MH17 Malaysia Airlines flight was engaged by our weapons that we produce. That could only be SA-11, Getfly, or Buk M1 of the Russian classification. We are surface-to-air missile system producers. We are very sorry about what has happened. Unfortunately, our weapons was used not for its purpose, and I cannot hide this fact. And we are all interested in the true investigation and the true findings of this case. But as far as the missile trace or footprints, as far as the possible footprints from SA-11 missile system, I can say that even in the internet you can see lots of different launches of such missiles, and the time that you can see the trace behind the missile depends on the weather conditions in a certain place. Again, lots of videos in the internet where in 15 to 20 seconds after the launch nothing is visible except a small dust cloud, because if the missile is shot at a aircraft flying at the altitude of 10,000 meters, in 4 seconds the missile has a speed of 1,000 kilometers, so you will not be able to see it in 4 seconds time. The inversion trace, again, depends on the wind. It could be visible within 15 seconds or several minutes. If we speak about any traces, I can tell you that all elements of Buk M1 system are based on self-propelled chassis with they're very smooth in motion. If you take a notice of that Buk tracked vehicle motion, the missile system is very good in terms of cross-country capability, better than any crossover with an automated switch gear. So, because we have one of the best transmissions, one of the best gearbox, and the traces could only be left if the crew makes a turn on the same spot. Yes, there could be traces if it turns on the same place on a wet ground, but as far as the launches are concerned, again, about the grass, whether it was burnt or not, it depends on where the launch took place. If it was made or on the dry grass field, there could be some grass fire, but the crew defines the place very carefully, not to be burned. And I have noticed many launches in Astrakhan region of Russia where it was very hot, and I saw no fire after the launch of the missile. Well, the fire could be where the drones, shot drones fall down, but not where the missile was launched. Thank you. Introduce yourself, please. Anton Lyadov from Russia 1 TV channel. You have mentioned Zarochinskaya settlement. It was also presented in the data of the Russian Ministry of Defense in July, and they have shown two pictures. One showing Buk M1 missile, and the other without that SAM missile system, and no traces of the movement of that system was visible. Could it evaporate, or how it could happen? Again, this is a technical question. Again, in the previous answer, I tried to cover this question as well. Again, to make a launch of the missile, just one SAM launcher is required. Of course, to have a maximum capacity, we need to have a command post, radar systems, but any launcher could go to a certain point to launch a missile. As far as the no traces or footprints are concerned, again, if it was moving on a asphalt road, there should not be any any trace. If you remember the last military parade on the Red Square, there were nothing found. I mean, on the ground, no traces or no footprints. Thank you. Again, the question from the right side. Your question, please. Russia Today, in Spanish. Some Western media have published their own journalist researches from Spiegel, from Bild. Do you know the details of those investigations and how you can comment on this? Let me try to answer this question. The question again to the General Director. As I have said, there were a lot of contradictory information streams, lots of contradictions were voiced, and to define who saw what, who did not see anything, well, as Mikhail Vladimirovich has explained, not to see it does not mean not to have it there or to have any traces. To hear first the explosion and then to look up and see how it was exploded. I mean, this MH17 flight. This is against any physical laws. If we divide the velocity of sound to 10 kilometers at 30 seconds, so let's not try. If you try not to breathe for 30 seconds, and if you heard anything, you just look up and you see nothing, even fragments. So it's pretty difficult to define. And you have to also understand that this is a combat zone, and military psychologists know what it is. This is it means lots of people, because it's lots of projections, people, events, speculations, and they shape the public opinion, and this is pretty difficult to comment on this. And again, I can repeat that our aim is to technically evaluate the case, and I hope that this work that we have done will be useful for identification and adequate findings of this event. Thank you very much. Your question, please, from the right side. Pavel Krasnov, First Channel. Well, really, the Russian objective control assets have not have just found the availability of Ukrainian SA-11 systems and the Ukrainian radar, which was operational at that time. But your staff took part in the commission, investigation commission. Do you know anything about the air traffic controllers on the Ukrainian side with each other? Are they available to the commission, and do they discuss any movements of SAM assets or radar activities? Because we know that the radar were very much active on the vicinity of this date. The question contains the answer. Really, we cannot explain why the radars were very active if there were no air traffic at that area. This activity is pretty easy to detect, because if you switch on a radar, it gives a big signal, and it's hard to conceal it. And this is the major problem of air defense assets, because you disclose yourself at once and you become vulnerable to any strike. As far as the air traffic controllers' communication, especially with the military, the air traffic control zone that belonged to the military side, because air traffic control is divided into civil and military, and those two parts cannot act as something separate. They always talk to each other, and they separate the air as a road traffic, but we only know from the media, it was not mentioned in the commission, that there was only air traffic communication from Ukrainian air traffic controllers to our Russian Rostov-based air traffic control unit post factum, after the crash of MH17. You can find it in the internet, but unfortunately no information about communication between air traffic controllers to the crew. It should be on in the black box, but again, the military air traffic controllers' communication with the civil was not provided. We hope that it's going to be disclosed, and it could really help to define who was to blame. Thank you. Your question from the center. Alexander Panushkin, TV Center. Can you elaborate on the military plane? Because there was some evidence who saw the unidentified attack plane, and there was a guy who worked from Dnipropetrovsk airfield who said that 3 fighter bombers took off fully loaded, and one got back without one missile. So, do you confirm 100% that it was that MH17 was shot down by a surface-to-air missile? Again, I have mentioned it several times that we have provided a technical analysis that we are fully held responsible for. Again, we have appealed to the European Court of Justice and European Commission. If we are found guilty in any misinformation or misinterpretation, that could be damaging for us, and we are very careful about what we say. As I have mentioned, we do not reject any versions. We only say that if MH17 was shot down by a surface-to-air missile, this missile system could only be SA-11 Buk M1, and only this type of missile. Your question, a lady is trying to ask your question for a long time. I represent Peru. You had an access to the fragments of that crash. Do you really, do they correspond to the theory that you have just provided to us? The question to the experts, and Mikhail Vladimirovich, could you answer? Our air defense group representatives were invited to be part of that international investigation team in the second half of February 2015. Well, again, the first information which could be viable was only obtained in March this year. We have provided our opinion about this. We're only showing pictures that are available in the open source, because we have no right to disclose any classified data, and which is used by the International Commission. But if we were not sure that we're 100% right, we would not have submitted or provided these findings. In the early May, I went down to the Netherlands and have submitted the same findings during the session of the investigating commission. And if there could be any doubt, we would have not held this conference. Dear colleagues, dear journalists, our time is up. Let's limit the number of questions, because we're a little bit behind our schedule. And let's have your question, please. No. NTV, Mikhail Luzhetsky. Did the United States of America have provided their satellite imagery on the date of that crash, which could confirm your version? Yes, based on the Ministry of Defense, that area, that airspace was observed by American satellites, SBES and GIHOL, that are the most efficient optic intelligence or reconnaissance satellites to see all possible launches of all missiles of all types. It's hard to it's hard to think that the Americans have missed this launch, and well, I don't know why these data were not transferred to the Commission for Investigation. We cannot comment on this, but that certainly could set a full stop for the question who was to blame. So we hope that this information would be transferred to the Commission to find out the real guilty side. Your question, please. One or two questions, and it's going to be enough, because we can speak a lot endlessly about this, especially if we're talking about the technical side. So we're limited by time. Please, your question. Good afternoon. I'm representing Prince Latino Agency. How can you explain that this Malaysian MH17 civil aircraft was flying over the battlefield, over the conflicted area? This is a question to the expert. Well, the question is, the responsibility for the air traffic control over its territory is vested in the state over which the aircraft fly. And, well, the area was a battlefield for a long time, and lots of SAM assets were operational. I have no comment on this. Why this area was not closed for civil aircraft traffic? I think maybe for commercial reasons or for any other reasons, but I cannot comment on this. This is beyond our technical capabilities. Your question, please. One more question, and this is the final question. Ahmad Ajal from the Lebanon Telecommunications Group. Dear General Director, dear experts, we know that the 1st of May was the last commission on the investigation of that air crash. Did you have a chance to show this wonderful explanation to that session, and what was any response, if it was any? And again, sanctions against Almaz-Antey Group and against Russian military equipments. We know S-300 surface-to-air missile system story, which when there were difficulties to pass it over to Iran. How today's sanctions prohibit to Almaz-Antey to fulfill their future contracts, including that S-300 to Iran, and what is the case? How is it going? Mikhail Vadimovich, can you answer the question about the Commission? Yes, really. The Commission session took place in the early May of this year. 2 days. There were 2-day session, and we, as experts from Almaz-Antey Group, have reported 2 points: that the disclosed information on all types of surface-to-air missiles, which were mentioned in this presentation, because up until the moment, all that information was either commercial or military secret. On the other side, we have submitted all findings that you have heard today, except the 3D animation model. But again, we were talking, the experts were talking to each other, and it was quite a technical talk. And we have provided all that information, and as far as the Commission is concerned, the information was accepted. How it was accepted, no comment until the end of the official investigation. We cannot comment on this until the official findings are going to be disclosed. Then General Director is going to follow up. As far as the S-300 missile system, is concerned. All limitations have been lifted by the political leadership to supply the system to our customers. If there is a contract, we will supply S-300, including Iran. Thank you. Thank you. The very last question, please, and we will finish our press conference. Dmitry Reshetnikov, TASS Information Agency. Jan Valentinovich, have you compared this air crash with the air crash of 2001 when the Ukrainian army shot down a civil aircraft over the Black Sea? Why at this case it was so long and this investigation takes so long? Who is going to answer, me or my colleague? Okay. As I said in the beginning, it was quite a unique work because we have never defined or evaluated air crashes, because we usually define the efficiency of surface-to-air missiles, but prior to our work we have consulted two experts who participated in the air crash that you have mentioned in 2001. The most important, we were told that the core of this analysis is only the sequence of findings. The analysis of real destructions only that you can touch or see, fragments or killing elements that you can measure and analyze, and only after this you can define the type of the ammunition, you can find the killing point or initiation point, knowing the features of the exact type of the missile. But we are a producer. We have defined the meeting conditions or engagement conditions of the missile and the aircraft, and using this methodology we were working. As I said, the first true data were only received by us in this February, and we have provided our findings to the International Commission in the early May. Why it is delayed, I don't know, because there are lots of activities going on, and we were only evaluating the technical capability of the missile approaching the aircraft, and all other aspects are beyond our competence. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are to finish our press conference. I want to say that you can get our press release in different languages about today's press conference. You'll have a chance. You'll have 45 minutes, and after that, we're going to distribute it in all media, mass media. If you have any future questions about our group of companies' activities, please refer to the press service electronically. You can find our email on our website. Thank you for your kind attention, and until next time.